Hi guys, welcome to another episode in our dev series. It will be fifth episode of the first season. We are working on a chess game. In the last episode we did some user input. Today we are going to do some validation. As I mentioned previously, we do everything in iterations. So today's validation will not be the final one, it will be just the very first step. So without further ado, let's get started. In the last episode, we implemented this perform action that is going to call our movement. But that obviously is very weak. It is very prone to accept some weird commands from user. So now it is time to do some validation. So we are going to start from perform action. Here we have action like exit, which returns immediately to the parent, and we trying to deal with a command. That's obviously not a good place to do so. So we need to figure out how to make it correctly. We will make a special function to handle movements. In the future, we may want to have other actions, not only exit, so it will be a good start. So let's call it move details, and we will try to gather some information about the move. I'm going to cut this element because it belongs to move details. And also in a movement, we also parse the action, trying to figure out the coordinates from where to where we are going to move our figure, what figure it is. So let's remove all this code from movement, keep it as simple as possible, and try to do this way. And as the parameters, we have board, which also we are going to pass as a reference, and let's force it as an array. Our action is string, and we want to return, let's say, also an array. It is helpful. You can see immediately our Visual Studio Code helps us that we defined our function as return type array, but we do not return anything. So this is quite helpful during development. Here we have from to as previously. It's parsed from action. We have figure from. Let's say maybe we can add also figure to. Yeah, and now we have a function that is responsible to take an action, parse it, and convert it to something more useful for our movement function. So now it's time to adjust our movement function, because now you can see also that some variables are in use but were never defined. And here you can see that we provide some, we have some variables, parameters that were never used. And to make it more consistent in orders of parameters, let's accept a board as a first one, and then from. Those are ints. A figure is a character, so we store this as a string. And let's keep formatting as in the function below, and our function does not return anything. Now here we have an issue. As we defined the new functions that accept abort as a first parameter, so let's keep it consistent. In a perform action, we will do the same. We need to change it here as well. Okay, something like this. And okay, what if the move coordinates will not be as we expect? Yeah, because we expect parameters to be from A to H to 1, from 1 to 8. We want to accept specific strings that we know that there are coordinates within our map board boundaries. So let's do this using a simple regular expression, and it will be a function valid move the range, and it accepts our action, and it will return boolean like this. Here we have our pattern and our action. This pragmat is not complete yet, because we want to have it only string being like this. Nothing before, nothing after. And now we can go even here. Before we do any explode, we need to validate if that even makes sense, right? So if not valid, action, we have to return. As you can see, because we defined return type as an array, we cannot just use return with nothing. So we need to return an empty array. Here is one important thing, because in the past, when I was in college, I was taught to use just a one return function, one return in a function. But as you can see here, this technique is called early return, and it makes perfect sense. Not always, but very often, and it simplifies the whole body, the whole content of the function, because at the very top we define conditions for which the rest of the function makes sense. So if this is not an action, what we passed here, it doesn't make sense to execute any part of it. And of course we can do if valid, and even in the very old style it will be something like this. Yeah, so we have if else, everything is inside. Here we have return, so that should be also like data. Yeah, same here. And that's way more difficult to read, and when you go from the top to bottom and you see data, you have no idea that it will be something to really return. Maybe there will be some other processing or so. Also, this else, sometimes in this principle of single return, was optimized by defining like this. So it was a little bit shorter, because there was no else statement, it was just an if statement, but I think it's return. I think it's a good practice to do early returns. It makes life easier and code more readable. Okay, so our move details is done. We have some validation. We know that user will never try. I mean, may try, but it will never success. Try to do movements outside of our board. So it's time to implement it here, right? Because we have some move details, and then we call our movement using this data, but this data may not exist, right? Like here. So we need to check if our move details it's not empty. It's not empty. Then we can do our move. And validation usually has two parts. Not only to check if data is correct, but also to inform user if when the validation fails. Yeah, so let's make this else statement and return some message. It will be very simple because we return a string here, but to make it easier to recognize in our main loop, let's say that every time we return string is a error string, but if we return a number, it will be something to proceed in the main loop. So having some output from our perform action, we may want to store it somewhere, and now we need to know how to deal with the output. It can be either a string to display as a error message or some code. So if so user pressed enter, we performed some action. If action is exit, we got result equals to 0. We set our flag exit to true, and that will end our loop. And we clean up the result. We don't want to proceed anything else. If it's not, we do not expect any other numbers, so we suppose that it will be something to display to our user. We print our board. We clean our action, key press, and here we can concatenate this with our result. So we will display a result in the same line where we display an action. And there's one more thing to improve, because previously we we clean up our line using length of the action that was executed plus those 15 characters for those parts. That's not very efficient. That's just to show you that you can do this this way, but let's make it more resistant. We are going to clean up everything to the end of the line, and we want to do exactly the same in this line to be sure that before we print anything, here we jump to the first character of the line anyway, so we can we don't have to do it here. So I guess that should be it. So let's go to console and see how it works. So that's our console, and we need to use our Linux. Okay, and PHP index PHP. Okay, board looks as it was. Oh, here's a first error in line 142. 2. Let's see what we have. So result. Of course, we never set this result to any value. So let's define this in a key press. Result is equal to nothing. And that also makes sense because we want to display that result, this error message, only once. When user will press any key, we don't want to display this anymore. That's why we can clean it up here. So let's go back to our console and run again. So yeah, now we can type no errors, exit, enter, we are out. Rerun from A2 to let's say A3. Yeah, I'm using small and capital letters, all fine. From let's say G9 to J2. Yeah, and we have invalid move message. Let's type something else, A7 to A6. Yeah, everything was fine. Exit works. So that was a very first step of our validation. We also did some cleanup. Now we specify some return types, accept types, all our functions accept parameters in the same way. So I think we did a quite a good job. Code smells a little bit better now, even though it has more functionality. In the next lectures, we will proceed with this code. We will do some more refactoring, more validation, but that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching and see you next time.